something ain't right. I said something, yeah, I said something ain't right.
Something ain't right.
What?
What's up, everybody? Welcome to Something Ain't Right, another podcast. We are excited about this podcast because we're going to bring personal faith and politics together a little bit. And this is the first time doing that. And so we have a special guest with us today. His name is Shane Jenkins. What's up, Shane? Welcome to the show.
What's up, Trey? You good, man?
Glad you're here, man. Tell us a little bit about who you are, just the person. Family, faith. If you are a man of faith, how long you've been saved, and just give us a little background on yourself.
Okay. Yeah, I grew up in Dallas-Fort Worth, born in 77. Had a pretty normal upbringing, went to private school, stuff like that. But
You went to private school?
I actually did. I know I don't look like it, but
you do look like
wow.
it.
I do look like it. And but no, I found out I was adopted when I was 13, and my life really took a bad turn. Because I felt like the person that I thought Shane Jenkins was a lie, was a myth, was fake. And so I set out creating this persona of what I thought a man was at the age of 13, very immature little boy. And what I thought a man was somebody from like Goodfellas, or some of these people that come into a room and people are afraid, or they know who that guy is, know to stay away from him. And so from, I guess, 13, 14 years old, I started walking down a real dark path and dropped out of like sports that I was participating in, and started skipping school, doing, drinking and using drugs and stuff like that. But it led me to juvenile in Texas prison. I went to juvenile first time at 15, did an extended period from 16 till I was 19. Got out when I was 19, shot and killed my stepdad in self-defense when I was 20 years old. And so that really took a toll on my psyche. My stepdad was somebody that I had lived with for a year, and somebody my mom loved. And so I had a lot of I struggled. He was beating my mom and stuff like that, pulled a gun on me, shot at me, and missed. And I ran downstairs and called 911, and he came after me again with a shotgun, and I shot him 11 times and killed him. And so I was 20 years old when that happened.
Wow.
And so it was something that really... part of me was like, he was beating your mom and he tried to kill you. But the other part of me was like, that was I knew his son. He was a Vietnam War hero. And it was something that I had this tear like in my spirit. It was just this war that I started fighting in myself. I had guilt and shame on one side, and I had like this foolish, like arrogant pride, like he got what he deserved on the other side, and it was at war within me. And so, really, after that, I turned to a lot of drugs and alcohol, was in and out of the prison system 3 different times as an adult. And in 2016, I gave my life to Christ at a Charm Prison Ministry event.
Shout out to Charm.
I met David Trickett and Tommy Anderson over there at Carol Vance Unit, and gave my life to Christ, man. And then Jesus met me right there at the end of my rope. My adopted mom had died in 2012, I guess, and this was 2016, and so I really didn't have anybody to walk with me through that last prison trip. And Jesus used that moment to come in and just swoop in and tell me he called me son, you know what I mean, and he told me I'll never leave you nor forsake you. And at the end of that Charm event, I stood up and professed to be a Christian and wanted to pursue Jesus.
Right there in prison.
Yeah, right there in prison.
What year was that?
2016. And then so I got out in 2018, moved from Dallas-Fort Worth to Houston. I was supposed to, all my kids and stuff are in Dallas-Fort Worth. I have 5 children. All teenagers are older now. And so I felt like God was calling me to Houston, to Charm. And so I stepped out of the boat into Spring Branch into West Houston and became a full participant in Charm Prison Ministry, and went through their discipleship, got on staff eventually at Charm, and worked there for about a year.
What did you do there?
I was what you call the ministry assistant, but okay. I did a lot of the I picked up guys from the bus stop that were coming to Charm. I would take guys to parole or to Walmart or to wherever they needed to go, because a lot of guys coming out, don't have license or whatever, or a way to get anywhere. So there's a lot of need for labor. I would load the trailers for the ministry events. I would go in. I started going back into prisons and sharing the gospel with the guys, playing basketball. I got to be some of the Charm. I wear the red Charm shirt and whoop the guys like they used to do me when I was in prison.
Yeah.
So,
wow. What a background. What a life. That's a lot to swallow just to start the show off. But thanks for sharing that and just being willing to share that with us. And the reason we have you on the show is because being a man of faith, being a Christian, there's something that ain't right. All right. There was this big incident that happened, and what we want to do is kind of run down a list, and I'm going to allow you to kind of check the boxes. Yep, that's true. No, that's not true. Okay. So, Jessica, why don't you do the honors of
you ready?
Going down the list?
All right. You can just say yes or no.
Okay.
You're a Donald Trump supporter.
Yes.
You smashed the window out at the Capitol with the tomahawk's axe.
I did do that, yes.
You threw projectiles at police during the January 6th Capitol riot insurrection.
Partially, yes. It wasn't an insurrection, but yes, I did throw things at the police.
Okay.
You were sentenced to 7 years in federal prison.
True.
Found guilty of 9 criminal counts.
True.
Including felony civil disorder.
True.
Obstruction of an official proceeding.
True, but that was thrown out by the Supreme Court.
Okay. Assaulting, resisting, or impeding an officer using a dangerous weapon.
True.
Destruction of government property.
True.
Okay. Mostly
Dang.
true.
Well, something definitely ain't right.
Something ain't right about that. Now, obviously you can kind of laugh about it now because you've been pardoned by the president, correct?
Yes, sir.
Yeah. But this is a very, very heated topic across the country. Some people would look at you like you're an evil man, to have done what you did, and maybe even call you the scum of the earth. I've seen a lot of comments where people didn't even want you on our podcast.
Right.
But I'm just of the belief that, within Christianity, of course, we have people that have passed. And then when people get saved and become a Christian, I think there's a facade that the mistakes stop. We stop making mistakes. We stop doing things wrong. All of a sudden, we just have this perfect situation. And I think we hide behind a mask. And so I feel like we can kind of take the mask off and hear personally from someone who was there. And obviously, you're willing to even admit, to the things that were on that list, the majority of them, which I actually read in a news report. And I think this could be an episode people can learn from. Now, they could walk away and think, the same thing, like, hey, man, this dude is trash. Or they may be able to reflect in the mirror and say, gosh, how many times have I done stupid stuff? And how many times have I done things I regret? Or, some things you might stand by, some things you might not. And so just what led you to go, first of all, to Washington, D.C. on January 6th? What led you there?
I had always been on parole or in prison during any election. I didn't really care about politics. Probably prior to 2020, I would have said I was a Democrat because I was kind of like open to whatever feels good. I don't want to intrude on anybody's life or whatever. And so I could that's kind of how I felt. I would have voted for Obama or, whatever. But something happened in 2020. I started following politics, and whenever COVID hit, I lost my job in the oil field when they shut down the oil fields because people stopped traveling. But also there was an oil and gas war between OPEC and Russia. A lot of people don't know that. But right before COVID hit, that happened. So the price of oil got cut in half. So they shut down pretty much West Texas oil fields. So I went home and was trying to scrape together enough money to pay this mortgage and these 2 vehicle notes that I had. And so I started listening to a lot of politics because the stuff that was going on in the world was having an impact on my personal life at home. And so, the election started coming, and I was very hopeful that, Trump would win again so we could open up the oil and gas industry again. And so I voted in the election because I was finally out. I got off parole in 2019, and I was able to vote for the first time. So I registered to vote, and I voted in Texas. I voted in Fort Worth early, November of 2020. Well, it was actually COVID early, so it was in October. And then I watched the election, I guess it was November 3rd, 2020, and it was Trump in the lead all night and Biden trailing all night. And then I was like 10:30. I was like, we got it. We're in there. Yeah. And then I get up the next morning and they're like, Trump lost. And I was like, what? What is going on here? How did that?
What a comeback.
Who voted after 11 o'clock? Like enough to swing the election. Yeah. And so then things kind of started. They started leaking videos and stuff started coming out, and it was just real suspect, right? And so, in December, mid-December or sometime around there, Trump released a tweet, and it said, "Come to D.C., join the Stop the Steal rally," and he put in all capital letters, "Will be wild." And I was like,
Oh,
I've thought about it, and I was like, man, now looking back at it, I was like, if he had not have put "Will be wild," I probably wouldn't have gone, you know. But
You're
so
like, count me in.
I'm a little wild.
is that
you
why
know?
the X came in?
Well, that's another part of the story. But so
We'll get there.
You know, Trump. So say that the election's legit. Trump would be out of office January 20th, right? So I was like, I got like a month and a half with him, 2 months left in office. I wanted to go to D.C. to see him as the sitting president. I've never been to D.C. to see all the historical sites and all that. I've never been to a rally or a Trump rally. So I was like, I want to go check this out.
So that's why you went.
Yeah.
Okay.
And I wanted to go, well, I had a lot of questions about the elections.
Yeah.
And I wanted to go protest. I wanted to have my voice heard in protest. Really what I wanted was for them to put a pause on certifying the election on January the 6th, take a 10-day period to investigate it, and send it any state that had questions about their election or there was questionable video about it, send those electors back to those states, give them 10 days to do an investigation, and if they said Trump lost, then Trump lost. But at least let's take an honest look at the election. That's what I wanted.
Can you describe what Trump was telling his supporters that day?
Well, he said he said that he was going to go to the Capitol with us, which he didn't. But he also said, let's go peacefully and patriotically to the Capitol and make our voices heard. He didn't say, let's go burn it down or let's go drag them out and string them up.
Is there something that he said to the nature of fight that caused y'all to feel like, oh, we're going to go get violent?
Well, he didn't say he did say we're going to have to fight to keep this nation.
I mean, a lot of Democrats and Republicans say we got to fight or go in the streets and fight.
Well, even today you see,
even when he got shot, he said fight, fight, fight.
Right. Well, you see, Hakeem Jeffries just the other day was like, we're going to have to fight.
That's
these people.
right.
And so you could extrapolate that however you want to look at it, but he didn't say we're going to go fight at the Capitol. That's where we're going to go. He didn't say that. So there may be. I mean, I do feel like. I just don't feel like that's what he meant, and maybe some people felt that way, but that wasn't what was on my mind. That's not what I saw at the Capitol either. So
what caused you specifically to go to the Capitol when it was barricaded? The police had it barricaded,
going inside. So take us to the moment you marched down with a bunch of people. Right. Was it an angry mob?
Well, so
what was it?
This was such an insurrection. You guys wouldn't believe. Like after Trump got off the stage, the people that I was with, I actually met a family, a mom and two daughters at the DFW airport that I had on a layover, and then we flew on the same flight to D.C. But I was with them listening to all the speakers at the rally and stuff like that. And so after Trump got done speaking and was like, we're going to the Capitol or whatever, they needed to go to the restroom and freshen up at their hotel room. So we were in such a hurry to get to the Capitol to burn it down that we went to their hotel room and let them use the restroom and powder up and you can get makeup on, and I went and got coffee and protein packs for everybody. So by the time they came back downstairs and I gave them the coffee and protein packs, they were like, oh my gosh, they looked on their phones and somebody stormed the Capitol. And I was like, what are you talking about? And that's when we made our way to the Capitol. So it wasn't like we ran straight from the White House to the Capitol to go tear it down. Now, in response to what you said about going through the barricades, there are videos on revolver.news that show at 12:30 people talking to the Capitol Police and going to the barriers and the cops giving them a thumbs up, and then they go take down all these bike racks that are blocking the way for people, take down all the ski fencing, and take down all the trespassing. If you're like, past this point you're trespassing, they took down all those signs because when the crowd came that way, now all those things were not there to show that the people would be breaking the law by going past those barricades because they were no longer there at that point. Now when I got there, none of that was there, and it was just all people everywhere. So
it just seems like there's so much surrounding this where you see stuff like that, but then you'll see some real stuff being done against police that probably, wasn't a situation like that. So do you think there was a mixture of some type of a purpose behind it from the other side, as well as a lot of mistakes on those who were marching to the Capitol? Like, what do you really think went on if you had to tell it in your view?
not to sound conspiracy theorist,
yeah.
but if there's one thing that we know our government is good at, it's overthrowing governments or making it appear as if that's going on. And so I know for a fact, from being in the D.C. jail, I interviewed members of BLM and Antifa that were in the crowd that day and that had groups with them that were provoking police, throwing water bottles at the police, cussing the police out, that were amping the police up. So
Were they dressed like they were
they
normal?
were dressed like Trump supporters.
They had Trump hats.
And how do you know that they were BLM or Antifa?
Self-confessed to me in an interview in the day. I've got a letter on one of my social media pages that is actually from a guy that I interviewed for about 3 hours. I wanted to hear, he's an Antifa guy, and I wanted to hear his story and why he felt the way he did and what they were doing. I wanted to know why they were there, because I felt like if I could unlock what they were doing there, then it might have unlocked some of the stuff that I had seen that I couldn't understand why things were happening that were happening. It just didn't make sense to me. So
Sounds like you kind of walked up on things as they were transpiring. So were they already in the Capitol when you walked up?
when I got there, when I got there, it looked like somebody had kicked a fire ant bed, and it looked like there was people crawling all over the Capitol, and I was like, "Holy crap, it's going down." And so I was like, "I got to go see what this is," right? So probably in retrospect, against good judgment, but I wanted to see what was going on. And so when I climbed up on the actual inauguration stage, where when the president gets sworn in, they didn't do it this year, but any other year, when the president puts his hand on the Bible, that's the stage where they do it. That's where I ended up at. And when I got up there, it's called the Lower West Tunnel. It's where the tunnel the president actually walks out of before he gets inaugurated. And when I got up there, the police were full up in the tunnel, all in riot gear, helmets, face masks, riot shields, batons, all of the full deal. And there was people up against them. Like, it was like a crowd of probably, 5,000 people right there. And I was standing on a window ledge to the left of the tunnel, and I'm watching the crowd like start pushing against the police, and they're like, "Heave, oh," like back and forth, and then it gets violent. And at that point, I never really saw people like going after the police. Now, they were pushing against them, like
trying to get
but
past
nobody was striking the cops or anything like that. And then the cops kind of got pushed back in the tunnel, and I started seeing people come out of the tunnel all bloodied and pepper sprayed and stuff like that. And I'm
including police officers or
just protesters, because there was no way you could. I mean, I don't know if you've ever seen a fully kitted riot gear police. Like, they have a face mask and they got a ballistic helmet on.
Right.
They have like shoulder pads. They got the big riot shields, and then they've got all the cops behind them with batons. So if you get close to them or whatever, they can spray you or they can strike you. So
it would have been just as easy for all those people to just turn and walk away, right?
it would,
But
to an extent.
what you're saying is you know for a fact there were instigators in the crowd that were BLM and Antifa that you think helped to fuel a fire that was already heated.
Well, that, and not only if you think about all the federal agencies that are in Washington, D.C., and then you have I know for a fact that there's federal informants in the crowd.
Yeah,
There's
I've heard about that.
A lot of people with ulterior motives, and you can't tell. We're all dressed the same pretty much, so you can't tell
Who's instigating
what's
and
going
who's
on.
legit,
Yeah.
who's
So there's
out of
a lot of
control.
hand signal. Like, we went back and spent hours. We had 16,000 hours of video that we had. I had 32 months to sit in the D.C. jail and watch. And I'm in there with Green Beret Special Forces guys. I'm in there with Army Rangers. I'm in there with Marines. And a lot of those guys dedicated their time in there to reviewing these videos. And they're like, "Hey, we found this video. Look at this." And so it's people giving hand signals and stuff like that to people in different areas. And we're like, what is going on? So there's
How did while in prison y'all were able to do this?
Right. So they provide us. We had complained so much that we needed to see footage of what was going on at the Capitol that they eventually had to create a computer program that we could watch on these tablets that gave us access to the 16,000 hours of video all around the Capitol.
Who did that? Who gave y'all that?
I guess the AU, the federal government, the DOJ,
Really?
or somebody had to do that, because we as a group, there was a lot of good that happened from us being in the DC jail, and one of them was that we were able to organize and try to attack some of these things that they were doing, because they were denying us access to those videos, and a lot of us were like, "Well, I did something," but there was maybe one or two out of the probably 100 guys that I was in there with that were in there. Like, 2 of them out of all those guys just started going in after the cops. The other 98, somebody got pushed down the stairs, the cops hit a woman or hit an old man, and then they reacted, and then now you're going to jail because you jumped. Whoa, what are you doing, hitting her or him or whatever? And which is a lot of the situation that I saw. Like I got involved in some heavy stuff, and I went into the tunnel to see what was going on, why people were coming out of there bloody. And before I even got into the tunnel, before I ever even took action against any police officers, I got pepper sprayed 4 times in the face, and I got hit from behind with the baton by a police officer that was striking a woman right next to me 32 times in the head, which is not their standard operating procedure with those batons is to strike anywhere below the neck, really. And he was going straight after her head, and at one point he pushed her head back and tried to stick the baton down her eye, like in her eye socket.
Why do you think he was doing that?
I think because she had a MAGA hat on is why I think. She had a bright red MAGA hat on, and I've looked at that video over and over. You can hear that woman screaming, "Please stop, don't do this." And the only thing, she never took like a physical aggressive. She only is always trying to cover herself up. Her name is Victoria White. You can look her up on Twitter. I'm sure you can find the video. But there's a lot of stuff that I wouldn't care who you were. You know what I mean? If somebody was doing that to you or to me, I hope somebody would step in and do something or say something.
This episode of Something Ain't Right is sponsored in part by the man to my right. If you've been wondering why I've gotten so swole lately, as you can see, well, you can't because I'm wearing a jacket, but I attribute it to my supplement man right here, Troy McKinney. Troy, tell them about what it is that you do and your product.
Man, I appreciate it, Trey. So I have a line of protein powder, BCAAs, amino acids, pre-workout. Just please go to my website, check it out.
What's your motto?
Dream, believe, and succeed.
That's right. That's self-explanatory. Now back to our interview.
Yeah, did you hear also that there were supposedly like 23 FBI agents in the crowd? And what were they like? What was the purpose of them being there? They were instigators or what?
So at first there was, they asked Christopher Wray where there was FBI on the ground, and he kept telling Congress people who you would feel he was obligated to answer. He would say, well, I can't comment on an ongoing investigation, right? And so they finally had to admit that there were officially 23 in the crowd, but I guarantee you, I know for a fact that there was a special, maybe it's called the HRT team, but they were trained to neutralize people that were armed with guns and stuff like that in the crowd, and they were supposedly spread out through the crowd as well. There was a lot of people with particular type colors of highlighted tape, or whether it was an orange sticker on the back of their helmet. There was a lot of different people in the crowd, but you couldn't tell. Again, you couldn't tell who was who, and you couldn't tell somebody's heart by what's you couldn't tell. So I guarantee you, that's one thing that I do know is that our government has been good at doing that stuff for years. So I don't know. I didn't witness it. Nobody said, "Hey, I'm an FBI agent."
Yeah.
But I would not be surprised at all to find out that there was likely hundreds of federal agents in the crowd.
Oh, okay. And how did the axe come into play in all this? Because on the news report it says you showed up with an axe in your backpack.
Right. So people wonder, well, you were going to a political rally.
Yeah, were you cutting
why
trees?
did you take an axe? And so I had never been to a political rally, and so I got linked up with a group. I forget it was Texans for MAGA or something like that, and we had a Zoom call. And prior to this rally on January 6th, they had multiple rallies since the November election, right? And so they told us, hey, when you go to D.C. is a very dangerous city just in and of itself, but they said also Antifa and BLM had been attacking people, robbing people, and they said that also in the previous rally that they had somebody had gotten stabbed. Some people had been felony assaulted, with deadly weapons or whatever, too. So they were like, protect yourself when you go to D.C. Don't be, whether it's, a pocket chain knife or a pocket knife or pepper spray or whatever. So I was like, well, I'll just take these tomahawks. And I know that sounds crazy, but my son had these tomahawks. I had them in my backpack, but if something happens, I don't want to just be caught unaware or whatnot, know what's going on. So
you know how to swing it?
I mean, no, it's just a little. It's like a little hatchet. When I say tomahawk, it sounds like this big, battle axe. It was a little hatchet, really, is what it was. So, but that's why I had it with me. So
Protection.
And so we haven't got into the things that you were charged with that you admitted you did. So what is it that you did, and tell us why you did it?
Well, so before I got into it with the police officers, I was standing on that ledge and I was watching the people go in and out of the tunnel and watching it. The moment that things changed for me was when I saw this old man coming out of the tunnel, and I have a picture of him on my phone. I could probably show y'all, but he had like a hat like this with the mesh side, but it was like blood was just pouring out of the side of his hat, and he was probably like 65 years old, and I was like, man, what did that dude do that deserved that? And I just couldn't. I hadn't seen anybody react in any way that had deserved something like that. And so I was like, man, if and we knew people had been given access to the Capitol on the other side, because a lot of people were in contact on the phone with other people, and we were on the west side, people on the east side were being ushered in through the building. Not only that, but these embassy doors that they had at the main front of the Capitol, which you could hit with a dump truck, a semi, and not break open. These doors mysteriously just pop open and let a ton of people in the front, and so I'm watching these people and I'm like, if we're going in the Capitol, why don't we just go in through this window and all these people will stop getting assaulted? So I pulled out a tomahawk, whether it was right or wrong, and I feel like destruction of property is probably wrong. I pulled out the tomahawk and I hit the window with it several times. When the crowd was like, no, stop hitting the window, I stopped hitting the window. And so I just was like, I would rather destroy some property than see people be wounded and hurt, and right or wrong, whatever. I didn't have like government takeover. There's no lever inside the Capitol building that you can seize control of to be like, I've got control of the government now. It's not like that. I just figured if we're going to go in, if you're getting let in on the other side, we might as well go with the path of least resistance. I'd rather break a window than see somebody get their head broken open or have to go through a line of cops to do it. So
what is the throwing projectile at police part? What is that?
Okay, so I told you guys I went in the tunnel and I got pepper sprayed 4 times and I got hit from behind by the police officer. Well, after that, somebody opened some kind of tear gas or something in the tunnel hallway, and I felt like the oxygen had been sucked out of the tunnel, and I came flying up out of the tunnel, crawling over the crowds. I couldn't see. I was trying to get back to where I was at before. Then I get over there, and when I get there, I get all the pepper spray off of me, out of my eyes, as best I could. And a guy jumps up on the ledge who later on will be known, and his name is Ryan Nichols, but I was in the D.C. jail with him. But he got on a megaphone and he said, man, my dad just text messaged me. He gets on a megaphone and is like, my dad just messaged me and said that somebody was just shot inside the Capitol and killed. An unarmed protester was just gunned down inside the Capitol. Mm-hmm. And I was like, so these people are beating the crap out of us. Now they're shooting people. And on top of that, I feel like they're stealing an election from the American people. And it's unacceptable to me. And so at that point, I lost my cool. And I ran over to the steps and I started just grabbing whatever I could find on the ground. And I was like, if I can throw enough stuff at these cops, maybe they'll stop beating people and maybe they won't shoot anybody else. And I know that's probably a backwards way to think, but I come to the end of myself. Yeah. And, it was a poor moment for Christ in my life, and I don't feel like I was a real ambassador for Christ, but at the same time, like being through some of the traumatic things with my stepdad and other things like that, I could see where seeing people hurt is not something that I'm okay with, and I don't care who it is doing it, and I don't want to see, somebody getting gunned down. And that was not the only person that died. There was 4 people that died at the Capitol that day. Roseanne Boylan, Ashley Babbitt, Benjamin Phillips, and Kevin Greason all died at the Capitol that day, either from direct action from the police. One got shot, one got trampled, and then was beaten while she lay on the ground, like literally like 15 feet from me. She's turning blue on the ground at the foot of the tunnel, and a lady cop picks up a walking stick about that big around and about 4 or 5 feet long, and is just, I've got video of it, whacking this lady on the head. The lady on the ground's name is Roseanne Boylan, and the officer that is beating her while she's unconscious on the ground is named Lila Morris. They gave that officer, Lila Morris, the Congressional Medal of Honor, and they sat her at the 50-yard line of the Super Bowl like months later. So, for me, I look back at the George Floyd thing, and I think, if somebody would have got the police officer off of George Floyd's neck, if they would have said, instead of pulling out their phone and just standing by and doing nothing, if they would have just rushed him and just, not to hurt him, but just to knock him off of the person on the ground, then maybe he would still be alive. And so to do nothing in those situations, I think is wrong. I think we have to, even at our own peril, I think we have to step into the breach and we're going to make mistakes. And I'm not saying that I've made the right decision January 6th, but I know that what I saw was unacceptable. So
What you're saying is, for you, it was motivated out of the right reason to protect the people and what the police were doing. I watched a police officer get interviewed, and he seemed very defensive about how officers were treated by people. And could you imagine that maybe there was some injustice going on by the police on civilians, and then there was some things wrong, injustices as far as civilians attacking police? And do you think you had multiple things going on at one time? Is what I'm saying.
For sure. And there's video of the officer saying, "Man, we hit one person in the crowd, and 5 more people jump out at us."
Yeah.
And so then those 5 people jump out and hit 5 officers, and then their buddy officers attack 10 more people, and then it's just, and that's how the mob. At that point, it becomes fight or flight, and people's battle mode just engages,
including police.
Right. And so I believe, I'm not saying that all of the cops did everything wrong, and I'm certainly not saying that all of the protesters, myself included, did everything right. So, they are human just like we're human, and we make mistakes, and I'm sure they make mistakes.
Did any police officers get charged?
No, not even the officer that shot Ashley Babbitt and killed her. When the woman was climbing through a window, unarmed, nothing in her hands, literally crawling through a window, he pulls a gun out and shoots her. And the Capitol Police did an internal investigation and said that it was a legal shoot. But if you shot somebody like that crawling in a window of your house, you're going to prison for murder. So I just don't understand how that is acceptable. But
Did race play a role at all? Was it all white folks? Was it a mixture of the crowd? Like, were you in prison? Some of the people that were locked up, were they all white people?
No, for sure not. There was Hispanic, there was black people, there was Middle Eastern Lebanese. There was all different.
These are people that were in prison with you.
Yeah, and we were in the D.C. jail together for 32 months that I was there, and a lot of those people were, you had Marines, Green Berets, Army Rangers, and I would say 90% of the people that I was in the D.C. jail with were people that had never been in trouble a day in their life. These are, for me, they're civilians. Like, these people, right or wrong, got caught up in a moment that day, and then now they're having the book thrown at them. And these people that are like, sir, I'm talking like some of these guys that were military trained, like fought in Afghanistan, fought in Iraq. I had the buddy James McGrew, Doodoo. He was blown up by an IED in Afghanistan, and but these people are being treated like this now. They're by their government. I'm blown away by how they treated people.
Did y'all, as you approached, how many months you say you were there?
I was there 32 months.
So as you were in month 32, did you feel like if Trump gets in office, I guess month 31, 32, did you feel like if Trump gets in office, we'll be pardoned, or you weren't sure?
I was sure, and fortunately for me, I feel like me being in prison before was an asset to our community in that jail, because I had a basis for, this is normal jail behavior, this is not, but a lot of people lost hope. They're like, and a lot of it hinged on, we would listen to Trump speeches, and it was like, did he talk about us tonight, or did he mention our names? Because he would say the J6 hostages or the political prisoners or whatever, and when the nights he wouldn't mention it, he was like, oh, we're so screwed. And other nights he said our names, we're gonna get out, like if he gets in office. So I never lost hope. I believe that I've felt all along that God was in control, and even if I messed up January the 6th, I know that God is the author of my steps, and so even through my mess, God is going to work right through all of that. And so I now when it got to the end and they were like, well, we're going to do a case-by-case basis and the violent versus the non-violent, I had a little concern there. But if there's one thing, you may not like Trump or you might like him, but what I do like about Trump is, from what I've witnessed, he's a man of his word. And when he said, I'm going to pardon those guys day one, here I am. 3 weeks ago today, he said he was pardoning.
Not even a month.
You were out on day 2?
I was, I got out. So he got inaugurated January 20th. I was out January 21st at 1 a.m. They let me out at like midnight. Within hours. So I was like,
just on a side note, what does the tattoo on your neck say?
It says, Mama tried.
Oh, wow.
Yeah,
she says self-explanatory.
Yeah, Mama tried, man. God bless. God rest her soul.
Do you have any issue with other races? Like if someone says, man, it was just this guy's probably a racist. He probably just wanted Trump because he's white power or something like that. Do you and if you have, you know, discrimination in your bones, or if you have any prejudices, I mean, you know, you could be real about it, but if you don't, like, what's the proof of that you aren't a white supremacist?
I would say check my heart. You know what I mean? I have cousins and children in my family that are of mixed descent, so it's not like I don't have a problem sitting here with you guys or anything like that.
Yeah.
I've never, you know, I'm part of Charm Prison Ministry, and it's not predominantly white. If you've been over there, Tommy Anderson, or
Yeah.
you know, so I don't have time for people who want to just assume because I like Donald Trump or support his policies that they're going to say that I'm a racist, because there's no merit to that, and there's nothing like that in my background. So
Yeah. But one thing you are sure of is you're a Christian.
yeah, 100%.
Yeah, and that's where the Something Ain't Right comes in, because it's like, okay, you're a Christian, yet you could have avoided the going in the Capitol. You could have avoided a lot of that, but you somehow chose the path of violence, right? And I hear what you're saying, that you didn't, and you were trying to defend people that were innocently being beat down. I could imagine if I saw that, you know, I don't know if I would have lose it, and I'm a man of God for 30 years. I mean, I might have tackled a police officer to get him off the woman, you know, and then I'll be right there in jail with you,
Right.
you know. You know, considering people believe that side of your story, put this mic up a little bit. Considering people do believe that side of your story, so how do you reconcile this faith element of your life and your heart, and then this act that you did that so many are saying there's no way you could do that as a Christian and profess that you were a Christian? How do you reconcile them? What would you say to people who would question your Christianity?
Well, I would say, you know, if you're questioning my Christianity, I would say, well, I've read a lot about grace in the Bible. I've read a lot about mercy. I've read about, you know, no condemnation in Christ. But I know that Jesus died for my sins of yesterday, today, and tomorrow. And he didn't say that when I got saved I was gonna, he says go and sin no more, that's the bar. But he didn't say we aren't gonna sin. Like, I look at Peter when they went to arrest Jesus, and what did he do? He pulled out his sword and cut the ear off the police. Well, the Roman soldier cut his ear off, you know, and Jesus is like, whoa, what are you doing? And he fixed the guy's ear. So it's like, you know,
Very similar.
We are men at the end of the day, and we're gonna react. And, you know, I've still haven't completely 100% come to terms with my actions that day. I feel like part of it was justified, and maybe not the window so much, but I just, you know, I pray that God, you know, works through that. And one day I pray that God will give me an answer for that. But I don't, you know, people ask me, would you go back and do it again? And I think about the 4 years under Biden. I think about all the people that died from fentanyl, or I think about all the things that happened in those 4 years. And I think that maybe if more people would have stood up and said, we want to take an honest look at this, then maybe some of those lives would have been saved. So I think there is a time for righteous anger and standing up. And I don't believe that, you know, I believe the government works for us. We don't work for them.
Yeah.
And so I believe that, you know, honestly, I believe that things happened as they should. Maybe my actions were not appropriate, or maybe they were. But I just think that God, no matter what, is the orchestrator of all of it, and he's going to work through it. I know that if I hadn't have gone, I wouldn't have started the nonprofit that I started while I was in prison that I'm actually working for now. And I feel like there's going to be a lot of good there's already been a lot of good that's come through that. And that wouldn't have been started had I've not gone through what I've gone through. So
It's part of your testimony.
yeah.
Did you have any, you know, he said you went from where the speeches were at, walked to the hotel, and then you went to the Capitol. You saw everything going on. Was there any moment where you had like a conviction in your brain that said like, Jesus, let's go the other way? Or, you know, turn away from this?
There was a time, so as I'm climbing up to the lower West Terrace, I get to this wall, and I hear this voice, and it says, Shane, this is dangerous.
That was Jesus.
And I was like, and I thought about why am I here?
Yeah.
I'm like, why now? Why am I here? And I said, you know what? I said, if I don't stand up for what I believe in, I thought about, I'm here for my children and my grandchildren and future generations. And I said, that's why I'm here. And so if it's dangerous or it's going to come at a cost to me, I'm prepared to pay that cost.
And do you think you paid it?
I did pay it, yeah.
Do you got 7 years total, or
I got 7 years. Yes,
and you
sir.
did 3?
I did 46 and a half months, almost 4 years.
Almost 4. So, what about people who would say you shouldn't have been pardoned? You deserve 3 more years for what you did.
I would say that maybe they're right. You know, maybe.
How long did you do for murder?
I didn't do any for murder.
You didn't
do
I
any.
got acquitted. I got no billed by the grand jury. But I've done I've done stints in prison before that were longer than 3 years, 4 years.
Yeah.
But I would say, what I say is equal justice. If you look at the riots of 2020, the Summer of Love, the George Floyd's riots, you look at there was like $12 billion worth of damage. I think there was like 12 people murdered in those riots. Multiple businesses burnt down and all those things. And if you look at the time that those people got, there was almost nobody went to prison or jail for those things. And you look at the people that got arrested at the Capitol, and I would say, well, you got to treat us like you treated these people.
Yeah.
And these people got almost no punishment. As a matter of fact, Kamala Harris was going around raising money for the bail fund to get those people out of jail. Meanwhile, we're stuck in the federal system, and they're like, absolutely no bail. Nobody got out. And even people with no criminal records are getting stuck in jail and couldn't get out. So, you know, I almost went 2.5 years before I even went to trial. So I think, if anything, I would say I did enough time doing the 46 and a half months to meet the requirement.
Yeah, it's still a lot of time. I mean, you know,
4
you
years.
did pay a price. You did. I mean, I couldn't imagine 1 year of my life in prison.
No, for
you know,
sure.
since I've never done any prison time. I've done prison. I don't know if I've done a year yet of going in and doing concerts and speaking. And if you add up all the days over 30 years of going to prison,
You done about a year.
I wonder if I've done about a year. But I'm in and out. But yeah, I mean, 4 years is a lot. And, you know, not that, you know, you could argue whether, you know, someone thinks you should have done the whole time, but you did pay a price. You did for the things you did do. I mean, you didn't kill nobody. You didn't hurt nobody, you know, that died or anything like that. So 4 years is a lot. I mean, there's guys that have gotten assault on a police officer that didn't even do 4 years before.
No, for sure. If you look at the actual things that I did too, I threw sticks at the police. You don't have any police officer saying this guy assaulted me, or you have nobody saying that I received this injury from him throwing something at me. And you have on the videos, none of the things ever impact any of the officers that I threw them at. So, I mean, it's done.
You sure do. You sure do keep a smile on your face even after coming out. How long you been out now?
I've been out 3 weeks.
Man, bro, I feel like I don't know how I would act coming out after 4 years of prison.
Well, you know, happiness, right, is contingent upon your circumstances.
But joy,
comes from the Lord, and
that's right.
Yeah.
all the way across. It's a flat line. It stays the same. So I had my bad days in there, but man, God got me through that, and He kept me steady and kept me being able to be a light for the other men in there. We were having Bible studies in there, discipling these people in there, and so I mean, it was fruitful times. But it was an honor to suffer alongside those men. It was hard. I watched a lot of people go through a lot in there, and that was hard. People losing loved ones, people going through divorces, people losing their homes, people's family turning against them, people's children testifying against them on the stand. Losing businesses. It was a lot, but man, I was blessed to be in there with those men, and most of those men are really, really good men, and I'm blessed to call them my friends. So
You seem a little emotional about that. Were you close to?
Yeah.
Did you get close to a lot of those guys?
yeah, man, I have a lot of friends that call me, and they're still having a hard time. You know, they've never been to jail, and they don't know what it's like to reacclimate back into society. And me, living the crazy life that I live, like I've been in prison and come out and know what it's like to have like PTSD from that, and to see people at the grocery store look at me and all my tattoos and be like, and to hear those guys calling me, these are guys that lived honorable lives. Like there's a guy who was a NYPD officer for 30 years, was a Marine prior to that, was on the governor's special detail in New York City, and got 10 years for tackling a cop who was beating a woman. And to hear the stuff that he's had to deal with, and to hear him struggling on the phone when he gets out, it's hard for me, because I don't think those men deserve that.
Are
They're
you,
all out, right? Sorry.
Yeah, they're all out. Yeah.
everybody got out on the same
There's
day.
a few people that are still not out, but some of them have like extenuating charges from something outside of January 6th, or they were
Like caught
arrested for
cases
stuff on
and that.
January 6th and had other
Prior
things.
things.
Yeah,
I've heard a few
there's
stories.
about 5 or 6 people that are still in that they're working on getting out. But
Yeah, so your actions from that day, did they affect your relationship with any Christians around you, or even with the ministry Charm that you're a part of? Did they see you in a negative way? Did it cause conflict or anything?
Let's describe what Charm is, if you
Yeah.
don't mind.
Okay.
Yeah.
yeah, Charm stands for Christ's Hope and Reconciliation Ministry. It is a discipleship ministry. They go into prisons and minister to men using sports, basketball, softball, volleyball, and then they share the gospel. They also operate 7 or 8 transitional, aka discipleship homes in West Houston, housing up to 75 to 100 men coming out of prison. I sound like I'm doing a Charm
It's
commercial. right
amazing.
now.
You should.
But no,
Yeah,
it's
they're amazing.
something that I really believe strongly in, and but you know, thank God that they have mercy and grace in their heart, because the Houston SWAT and the FBI came to our house, a Charm house, at 6:30 in the morning, and drug me out of there.
Because you left Washington thinking I'm good, and then they started searching.
Well, I
for
didn't
all
think
the
I
people.
was good, but I just knew that nothing had happened yet. And so I came home. I knew the FBI was on, like somebody had notified me, hey, the FBI is asking me questions about you. And so I knew something was coming. I had reached out to the FBI, and they're like, oh, you're good. We don't know anything about anything. And I was like, okay. But I knew that they had started doing an investigation. But they showed up early one morning, and it was blocked both ends of the street. And it was bad. You know, I was on the news. And so maybe at my church, I might have felt a little, stink eye coming from one direction or another, but nobody has come and directly said anything to me. I know if you just look at the surface of the situation that it appears, it's a bad witness, maybe, but maybe it's a bigger conversation starter than anything else, if you look at it later on down the road. But I do know that being in jail, for instance, there's a guy, Rob Morris, Lego Man. He was a January 6th Army Ranger, served 4 years in the military, 3 tours in Afghanistan, went to Penn State and became a school teacher after that. It was a history teacher, and then went to January 6th, and the government said that he used his military training to attempt to overthrow the government at the Capitol that day when it was throwing sticks and doing whatever else it was. But he was in the D.C. jail with me, and I talked to him on the phone, and he's like, man, I need you to get ordained. Because I want you to marry me and my wife. And he said, I credit you for my faith in Jesus Christ. And so there's like, I think about that, and I was thinking about like, man, if I could just know that I was a good witness to him, one person.
While in prison.
While in prison.
Yeah.
For the January 6th.
Yeah.
If I knew that one person would turn to Christ,
That's all you
would I
need.
do it all again? And absolutely I would do it. That one event was worth it to me. So I told him, I said, man, there's no greater compliment that you could ever give me in my life than that. And so I'm thankful for that, for that opportunity, so. And the witness was not necessarily sitting down and reading the Bible and sharing my faith. The witness is the walk. I believe walk it like you talk it.
Yeah.
Like it's in your heart. It should be pouring out of you, and that's what I believe. I don't believe you need to go around forcing the gospel on people. I think you should be the gospel that people see, and they're like,
Yeah.
man, there's something different about that guy. Why is he smiling through all this?
Yeah.
That's the kind of thing that I like to see. The gospel should be evident in your heart.
Are you getting a hard time from some of the other, guys, the ex-convicts that are coming out of prison, that are transitioning to the house? Are they looking at you, intimidating you, wanting to fight you, feeling like, how does everybody treat you? And because you're talking a lot of men, rough guys that come from some hard places, are you getting any intimidation from men about, this incident?
I would say, I haven't had any conflicts like that, but I would say it's kind of the opposite. People are like, man, you stood up for whether I agree with you or not, you stood up for what you believe in, and you were willing to pay the price for that. And I respect that as from one man to another man, whether you agree with me politically or not or whatever. People call me hero and thank you for your service and this kind of stuff like that. And that's a little bit.
Yeah. America's a little divided over.
Over
that.
So that's one side saying it. The other side's like, you son of a gun, like so.
Wow.
But yeah, it's mixed. But I haven't had any direct confrontation or anything like that.
Yeah.
So
Can you turn the other cheek if you do get it?
I believe so. Yeah. I mean, I understand.
Because you know they ready to put you right back in there. If you,
I think that it's a good opportunity for ministry to step in there, you know. I mean, I don't need to, you know, convince you of anything, but I believe it's an opportunity. That's what I want to see. It's where it's stop calling names and stop condemning each other, and let's sit down and have a conversation about common sense, about we don't have to like the man, but what are the policies, or I don't agree with what you did, but what good can we take out of it, you know, like where can we find the common ground?
Healthy conflict.
Yeah, have a healthy conversation. That's what we're missing.
Yeah, that's the purpose of this show is talk about issues that are somewhat behind closed doors, bring them in the open, because we as Christians act like we don't have any issues. We don't have any differences. And whether you disagree with me or not, we are of one kingdom. And our citizenship is not of this world.
That's right.
Which probably brings us to the next question relating to that.
So since you've been out, which is only 3 weeks, what steps have you taken towards your personal growth, personal changes, and in making amends for your actions with others?
I would say some personal growth that I've gone through since I've been out. Like when I got out, everything transitioned so easily for me. Like I had done this so many times, get out of jail and then put my life back together or build it back, you know, and I was good for the first week, and then technology caught up with me, and I was trying to set up a new laptop and a new iPhone and trying to get back into my old email and trying to get into my Verizon account and I was putting all this pressure on myself, and I was just like everywhere. My license is expired and I can't get insurance on my truck, and my truck's in the shop because Trickett's son rear-ended him in my truck, and now it's just one thing after another, and I felt like it was like I felt like I had been out 90 days and I hadn't got a single thing done, and here it is, I've only been out a week, and I really started to lose my cool. And I was talking to Kay, David Trickett's wife, about it, and she was like, well, Shane, she goes, have you prayed about it? And I was like, oh, you know. And so I went upstairs after that and prayed for about 30 minutes about it, and the next day things started to just kind of unfold better. But I felt like, you know, okay, I've done this so many times that I got ahead of God, and he's shutting all these doors in my face, and he's saying, I want you to acknowledge me, son. Like, you say you love me, then why haven't we had a conversation about this? And so he's the author of our steps. Shane's not the author of his steps, because if he did, I'd be busting the gates of hell open wide up right now, you know what I mean? Yeah. So, or still be in prison or whatever. Yeah. So God wants to be on the altar of our hearts. He doesn't want our ego up there. And it was an opportunity for me to acknowledge him and to walk through that and to humble myself, because I'm getting stressed out about this, and I'm getting calls from other guys struggling, and I'm trying to push them away because I don't have my house in order. And so God's like, you need to get yourself in check before you start trying to help anybody else. And so that was like you need to get down on your knees before me, and then we'll figure out all this other stuff. So
do you believe that even for us Christians that political views can be part of intertwined with our identity?
And that's what I was really getting to, that question. I jumped ahead, but was that Democrat, Republican, Christian? Do you feel like some people put their political ideologies before Christianity? And if so, do you feel like you got caught up in that, to where you got so infuriated by the political system that you almost lost sight of
your identity
as a Christian, being a new creation, being an ambassador, a representative for him, and in turn you got pointed in a direction that may have been outside of the realm of what God has called you, to be his son, his representative?
That's a tough question right there.
Yeah. But it is the case across the country. I'll look at Christians who have strong political views but very weak discipleship, very weak biblical foundation. They're very strong in knowing what Trump is doing, very weak in knowing what the body of Christ is doing or what Jesus is doing. And they can argue with you about the political side they're on, but can't do any apologetics about Christian, a Christian foundational doctrine.
Right.
So that's what I
for
mean.
Trump.
Or the
Yeah, I'll
Or
give you
the-
a quick example too. Like I used to do a Bible study in Kansas City. Well, I was a part of a Bible study, and everything was always lovely, always cool. And there were American people, right? Gringos, let me just put that. There was a couple, right? They were the nicest people to me, though, right? And then one day, I don't know how, I brought up that 9/11 was a conspiracy,
Oh, okay.
and they went off on me like really bad. Like I felt bad, and they got really awkward because they were rude to me,
Right.
and I had never seen that side of them. So kind of going off of that, I was like, man, there's something kind of deeper intertwined in there, you know, like
Yeah.
that they got so triggered.
Yeah,
So
for sure.
kind of just give an example of that, you know.
Just wondering if that happened to you, and if you see that.
Mine, I think, was kind of the reverse because, like I said, prior to 2016 to getting saved, like, I would have said I was a Democrat. Like, if you wanted to be a dude and marry a dude, I didn't care. I just didn't want to be a part of it. You know what I mean? I don't care. But to me, like, when I read the word and God spoke to me through his word, like, that's when I started to, I really got opinionated about abortion. Like, I was like, God knew me in the womb. He knows, you know, he knew me before he laid the foundations of the earth. Like, he could count every hair on my head, which there's not very many, but, but those types of things. And I'm like, so every soul, every life is important to God. And that really touched me. And I see the millions of abortions that have taken place, 60 something million, I think, in America, primarily targeted at the minority communities. If you look up Margaret Sanger, there's a whole nother argument behind all that. The abortion clinics are in the inner city for a reason. Hello, people need to read up on that. But my politics sprang from the foundation of the Word of God, the truth, really. You know, there's two genders. I don't want to say, I know people are going to freak out about me saying that probably on your show, but
No, it's been
it's
been declared by
Christians.
Trump.
No,
There's
you
only
know,
two.
I mean, yeah, but
They
it's
updated
like,
the website.
but
Yeah.
that was something that really gave me my foundation about it. Now, maybe did I go a little too far? Like, maybe have I alienated some people that I could have been witnessing to
Okay.
because of my politics? Possibly. But if somebody's triggered by me putting on a red MAGA hat, then maybe I didn't need to be ministering to them anyways.
Yeah.
Like, I feel like some people are just so far beyond, like, in Trump derangement syndrome that they're not reachable. But I feel like being reasonable, even like people at my church, like my friend Ann, who passed away 2 weeks before I got out, she was involved in the teachers associations and all that, and she was an English teacher but became a librarian, and we were talking about these books that they were putting in the schools that were contained pornography and
Yeah, I've been seeing
the
that
LGBTQ plus in there and all these transgender stuff. And I'm like, how do you feel about these books? And she's like, well, they're going around book banning and this, that, and the other. And I was like, do you think that's appropriate for children to see pornographic stuff or read about this stuff in school? And I was like, I don't, as a parent, if you ever show anything to like that or allow my kids to see something like that, there's going to be a big problem.
Yeah.
And so whenever you put yourself between, like, and she's a Christian, and she's like, I don't think the government should be telling us what books we can have in school. And I was just like, so there's a lot of, I think we have to be like, we have to give grace to people, and we have to know that, I think we're sowing seeds, right? And I may be a red and white MAGA hat wearing Republican, but I have an opportunity, but I should be representing the gospel first. And we're sowing seeds, and it may not be the right time for that seed to sprout or grow, because God's going to do that in his own time. But I think we still need to be good ambassadors.
Yeah.
And walk that out.
People should see the Jesus in you before they see the
Trump in you.
the Trump supporter,
He's a Trump.
Trump here. Look.
the MAGA hat.
No, that's for real. That's for real.
Yeah.
Jesus should be first and foremost in your heart. Absolutely.
One of the things that I keep hearing with you is that you still seem like if you get the wrong buttons pushed, that you'll turn violent. You still seem like you have if you do that, you're gonna find out. Now, you ain't the only one. A lot of people are like I don't know what would push me over the edge, you know. But like I hear you saying, like we're gonna have a problem, which that doesn't mean you'll turn violent. But do you feel like coming from your background, you know, the anger, the trauma you suffered, just like many men coming from, you know, the system where it's violent in prison, right? And do you think that plays a role in, even if you're a Christian, even if you're a man of faith? Because I disciple men that like, hey, bro, somebody hit me, I'm about to, you know, hit them back.
You do X, Y, or Z is on.
Right, but, you know, biblically, Jesus, you know, he didn't say be doormats, but he certainly took a whooping for his faith. and persecution for your faith is one thing. You know, someone slapping you in the face because you made them mad is a different thing.
Mm-hmm.
You know, these Christians in the Bible were persecuted for righteousness' sake.
Mm-hmm.
They were jailed for preaching the gospel. But I see a lot of men that see really that as strength, that you would hit somebody back or return violence with violence or anger with anger, when Jesus teaches the contrary, right?
Mm-hmm.
He teaches us. So even if you can't do it, I think more men need to start saying, you know, somebody does something bad to me, I'm gonna return love.
Mm.
Even though you might not do it, I think it's good to get in the habit of training ourselves that, okay, you do this to me or my family, you know, I'm going to trust that God would give me that heart of love to pay love in return. Of course, someone comes in, breaks in your door, and they're about to, you know, they're coming with a gun to kill your family or to rob you or whatever. Nobody knows what they would really do, you know. But I think it's important to point out that in your situation, where so many people hate you, based on media narratives, that not based upon getting to know you like we are, because we're having a conversation to get to know you, the Christ side of you as well as what happened in that moment. But you're not telling us that you're a violent person, right? You're not saying, hey, I will get violent if I have to, because Christ has changed you, right? How do you reconcile the two? Are you the violent person, or are you the Christian who chooses peace and love and grace and mercy? Which one are you?
My record would say I'm the violent person.
Okay.
Right?
Okay.
But I believe that Jesus in me is the real deal. So I can't say that there couldn't be a situation that would arise. If somebody did something to one of my kids, I might react. But I believe Jesus is the bar.
Yeah.
You know, are we going to fall short of the bar? Of course we are.
Every day.
But I'm not looking for that. Like, I'm not going to say, well, if you punch me, like, I'm going to react.
Yeah.
Because I hope that I would catch myself and say, maybe he's having a bad day, or maybe I wore the wrong hat, or he doesn't like my hoodie, or something, you know. Because that is the call in our lives. And you know, there has to be situations where we humble ourselves and or walk away from that situation, because that's the call of Christ on our lives. And so I don't see a situation where I'm going to react poorly like that. Now, am I human? Absolutely.
Yeah.
Will I fall short of the mark? Of course I will.
Yeah, I always say it's like there's a dartboard, right? And the bullseye is in the middle, and that's Jesus. And some hours you can hit the bullseye, and then others you're throwing it off, hitting the wall, right? And we're all striving to be more like Jesus, who's perfect.
Every day.
But until we get our glorified bodies, we're in this flesh, and it constantly is at war with this spirit. And I think you've told us today that this January 6th event that happened, that you had a moment of flesh versus spirit, and you won in some areas and you lost in some areas, and then Christ used it in some areas, and the devil's going to continue to push and use it for some areas. And isn't that life? Like, isn't that life? Life is a series of trials and tribulations, and some things we suffer for righteousness' sake. Some things we suffer because we do it to ourselves and the choices we make. But I really appreciate you being willing to be vulnerable and transparent. I don't think most of the people I know don't watch news, probably even as much as I do. I pay attention to the news. I don't talk publicly about politics because it's so divisive, and the person I'm talking to probably a lot of them haven't done their research. And then even when I find there are some that have a strong opposing view to me, once I start expressing it, they'll turn me into a demon. And so I'm just better off not even going there, because I want people to see Jesus in me, not Republican or Democrat or, you know, centrist or independent or whatever, because you just people are always looking for something to hold against you. And that's hard. It's hard for over 30 years as a Christian to maintain a reputation, a good name, an image that people can respect and love. And politics is one of the things that really pull you into a category where you will lose credibility as a Christian even. And so just for you to be able to share that and be vulnerable with us. We appreciate it. You know, it really means a lot to us, and I think our viewers. I think before we close this episode out, it'd be cool if, you know, we just recently got our podcast distributed into the prisons.
Okay.
You know, and aside from what you did, you know, what would you like to say to men who are incarcerated now, maybe feeling what you felt throughout your times in prison? How did you hang on to your faith? Maybe it's encouragement to get them through a tough time right now. Maybe they were wrongly convicted and they're sitting in there right now. But knowing what you know about prison and men in prison, we never have done this before because we really just got distribution in the prisons. What would you like to say to those men who are sitting in there right now?
I would say, if you're listening to this and you're in prison, I would say that know that ultimately that God is in control. I can remember walking into those prison walls doing ministry and feeling that just that weight of that hopelessness or that just crushing like loneliness, being away from your family and those types of things. And so I would say that, man, that there is hope. Even if you got a life sentence and you're never getting out, there is hope, but it's in the Word of God. I would say open up the Word of God, get in that church house. Even if you don't know how to pray right or these types of things, cry out to God. If you're in there and you're hurting, and so you're losing family members or they're dying or your old lady's leaving you or she's cheating on you or nobody's sending you money or whatever it is and you feel all alone, turn to the one that's always going to be there for you, who's never going to forsake you, because you can be freer on the inside than most of these people out here on the outside, and that the freedom comes from Christ. And I would just say that, man, don't ever lose hope in that. And, you know, get down on your knees and humble yourself before God. I would say that's how He works. And even in your mess, like I said today, God can work through all of that. So give Him room to work and just acknowledge Him and let Him, ask Him to guide your steps and turn to the Redeemer, because He will give you back everything, even if it's only on the inside. But I would say that's where I found peace at, was in Christ. So
Appreciate you sharing that, man.
That was an awesome story.
And,
thank you. It's inspiring.
And we say that to everybody who's out there watching, you know, whether you're in prison or not, you know, it never hurts to humble yourself and just ask God to, you know, be involved in your life. I was at a skate park the other day and I was speaking to two youngsters that were skating, and I shared the gospel with them. And one of them felt like, well, you know, God, you can't ask for anything. And the other one was like, well, the people I've seen represent God in my life. You know, I don't really feel like Christianity's for me. And I just say, instead of listening to everybody else, just go directly to God and ask Him, you know, to speak to you, to show you, to let your eyes see, your ears hear. And we believe as Christians that He's more than able to do that just for you specifically. And so we thank y'all for tuning in to this episode of Something Ain't Right. It was great, a great interview, and I hope that you learned something. And we look forward to you liking, subscribing, commenting, and sharing our episodes with others. And we appreciate all of your support. Thank y'all very much for tuning in.
Something ain't right. What?
Seen your dog die or somebody else close by, any tragedy, it can happen to you too. Like I know, I've been shot 8 times. I know it can happen to me.
They saying the most dangerous job right now is to be a young, good rapper.
We all wanted to be little gangsters. Negative music definitely got my best friend killed.
Everybody's being told what to play, when to play it.
Pain, struggle, turmoil, drugs, narcotics, addiction, prostitution. I come from just like a twisted Grand Theft Auto video game.
In order to make a lot of money, you need a lot of commercials. In order to get a lot of commercials from the advertisers, you need a lot of listeners. So the radio station's job is to play anything that's magnetic. what Sexy Red say? And you hearing a 6-year-old.
When I didn't feel good about myself, or if I felt like I was against the world, you know what I mean? I would go play Lil Wayne, F the World.
They don't understand really, you know, it sounds cool saying I'm gonna move a pack. Well, who's taking that pack? You feel me? Who's using that pack? You feel me? So
who is consuming this stuff and how that changes maybe what I will or won't do or say.
That music is more than entertainment. Music is religion. Music is storytelling. Music is emotion.
Before, you absolutely have a duty to go back and try to give people the right information and hope that something you said or did didn't send someone down the wrong path.
When I speak positive in a song, I see different from me speaking positive and me speaking negative. I drop a negative song, I hate admit I went number 1.
It's just acknowledging that, like any force within our lives, whether it's a thing we watch, a thing we listen to, or a person we hang around, there's influence there.